Hello, dear community, and very welcome at our next Tech Talk Roundtable with Amazon Web Services. It's my pleasure to have a very exciting round of experts here with me today. As you know, we want to give you some insights on the tech background of several companies. We started with this series with startups, and now we're including enterprises and middle-sized companies in the discussion as well, and want to enable you to understand the product mindset, the tech mindset of very successful international companies and startups. How do they do it? Why do they do it this way? To give you some of the insights and best practices on that topic. Thank you all of you to take time to be with us today. And first of all, very welcome Dragos Lapusneanu, Principal Account Manager at AWS. Very welcome.
Thank you very much for having us today. Nice to meet you.
A lot of insights, a lot of partnerships with many of companies, a lot of experience in how to develop the best products, be it as Amazon or as partner of many other companies. Great to have you here. Then we have Nicolas Tripp with us, COO at TourRadar. Nico, servus.
Hi, sir. Thanks for having us.
Hi. Philip Andrisewicz, Managing Director at Accenture. Philip, welcome.
Thanks.
And last but not least, Stefan Lippert, Product Owner at Raiffeisen Bank International. Hello, Stefan.
Thanks for the invite.
So we want to give some insights on the product DNA, on the product mindset, how to develop the best products, how to develop a product from an idea, how do you, so to say, gain experience in innovation processes. All of these topics we want to discuss with you guys. But let's start with first maybe quick round on how do you perceive product? What is product for you?
Yeah, great question. It's actually very exciting whenever we start to think about bringing ideas to life, creating products and services, be it, as you mentioned, as Amazon or Amazon Web Services. We see ourselves as being a very customer-oriented company. For that matter, products can actually be anything, and services that delight our customers or solve a particular need. That being said, and while over time Amazon brought a lot of services, a lot of products to the market, AWS is building at a very fast pace, a lot of cloud-oriented products and features. We actually see that product the product launch is actually just the beginning of the journey. So we don't actually have this product-oriented mindset. We want to stay true to our core belief that it starts with the customer, it ends with the customer, and it's a virtuous cycle from there on. So we'll always improve whatever product service we have. We always stay close to the customers, and that's really our belief there.
So the product would be the result of the customer centricity.
Exactly. If you talk about innovation, I hope we'll have a chance to cover that later in our conversation today. Innovation for us actually has a few components. It kind of starts with a culture, customer-oriented culture, but then it's also about mechanisms. And we start from the customer as one mechanism and work backwards from there before we even write the first line of code to create a product. So it's that customer centricity that kind of drives everything we do there. And we're not necessarily product or let's say competitor focused. We will keep the customer at the core of all our interaction and our creative processes.
We started this series with startups, with your colleague Daniel.
Yep.
But you see so much innovation and so much power also on the enterprise side. So Stefan, RBI is an international bank, one of the leading in the Central and Eastern Europe. You have fintech accelerators, you have investment units, a lot of activity around innovation and product. How do you perceive the definition of product? How do you go about it?
Yeah, first, you kind of mentioned now all the brilliant innovative things, but in our organization, this changed as well a lot the last years. As well to a product definition, which is a dynamic or a temporary thing because it's an iterative thing mostly. For me personally, the product is, I don't know, the vehicle to really create an impact with the customers. So it can be, starting from idea, testing an idea. Maybe the first is as an MVP to kind of refine the idea. But with always the aim to really create an impact with the customer. It can be that the same customer is more happy using our services. It can be that an additional customer can be, that the customer spends or kind of consumes more. But in the end, it's about bringing all these ideas kind of to life to pursue this one goal to kind of create this customer impact. So for me, when talking about these products, I often had the old pattern in mind where, especially in the banking industry, everything must be rock solid, thought through end to end, and then you end up with this multi-years initiative, and you are not even sure if this kind of makes an impact at all.
If the market needs it. Nico, is this customer centricity one of the main assets of startups, also of Radar?
Yeah, absolutely. Our entire engineering organization is structured around the type of customer you're actually solving the problems for. So we have one team as a marketplace, we have multiple customers. So we have the operators and the suppliers as one of our customers, and then we have the customers that book as another one, and we focus on the problems that they're having and to be able to solve and what they're solving. What we want to solve them, and so solve for them, basically. But we also have our internal teams and our operational efficiencies, and we have teams around that as well to make sure that, hey, we have product that is focused towards the customer, towards our internal team, and towards our operators that we work with.
Philippe, what's the status quo, let's say, in the broader economy? You have a lot of clients that you support as Accenture, you're also partner of AWS when implementing and developing products. What do you see with different clients? Is this mindset and awareness what product actually is there, or do we still have a lot of kind of awareness building to do?
I think the awareness is here. It's just a matter of questions. So there are many definitions and maturity levels you need to consider. For example, we talked about customer centricity, but then the question is well, who is the customer? Because, for example, I think, and why I'm talking about maturity, many companies and organizations tend to think the customer is more or less the customer who is using the banking app or who is using a platform for booking a tour, but as well the customer is inside. So you have some, I don't know, some back-end services, and you need to get that kind of thinking. I'm providing an IT service, and my customer is within my organization. And like the hyperscalers, like AWS did it, so a database is a product, and a compute, a virtual machine is a product. And I think that differs, that mindset throughout the whole life chain differs how successful you are, because if you are capable to bring that kind of product thinking to the very bottom of your organization, to the last screw, so to say, you're more successful. Else, and this is more or less the laggards, we put in the last year some digital lipstick on. You meet just the product from UX-based perspective, but not really thought through end to end. And this is making, I think, at the moment, the big difference in the market.
Two of you, or even three of you, mentioned the question of the organization that is set to develop very good products. So let's go into this topic. Which culture, talking about mindset, but also which organizational structure embraces the product development? Do you have any best practices on that? What do you see with your different clients?
Yeah, I mean, there's again this, let's say, this perspective of how Amazon, kind of transformed themselves, right, into a very large startup, right, as we sometimes call ourselves, that acts globally, that also has a tremendous responsibility, not just to our, customers, partners, but also to the communities, also to the planet, right, to sustainability in general. And yes, we do have some elements that help us act with speed, surprise or impress our customers, right? But at the same time, be very iterative in our innovation process and
agile.
And agile, of course. So I think Amazon, on one hand, has a certain set of attributes that we've implemented.
Such as?
And I mentioned the culture element. The people allow us to, by embracing the same, we call them leadership principles. So the culture is expressed through leadership principles. By embracing those leadership principles, we empower actually all our employees, all our organization to actually invent on behalf of the customer or listen to the customer, sometimes maybe challenging the status quo, right? So that's the first aspect, the culture. There's also the mechanisms we mentioned, but there's also, having the right tools at the same time, having the right maybe architecture, platforms, technical platforms to actually start building something, right? And I think this is really important, and it works for us. And a lot of companies do ask us, how does it work for Amazon? And we're happy to share.
How do you keep innovating?
Yes, absolutely. And we have those sorts of conversations with large enterprises who seek to also reinvent themselves. And we know reinvention is really key in today's world. If you look at kind of the time span and how many companies we have today, and let's pick any Forbes, let's say 500 top, 50 years ago compared today, it's only a fraction of those companies who are still today. But those who are there, they're very successful just because they've disrupted themselves, they've reinvented themselves. And I think that sort of mentality we can support, we can share, both as an example, as well as in AWS with our products, our services, to support that sort of reinvention.
I see at many startups, for example, or other companies, on their walls, it's always day one quote, or, they try to understand your, I think it's called pizza or 2 pizza team structure and so on. You have 1.5 million employees, I think, if I Google it very briefly and quickly, so to say, roughly. Which kind of structure? I mean, I understand the mindset and embracing the leadership, but it must be also something on the structural and organizational side that this can still work and function.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the 2 Pizza team is an example of how we organize ourselves for innovation. And this actually means, creating a communication workflow that just works, and it's kind of goal-oriented, and it's single-threaded. And those teams who are working on a project or on a we could call it a primitive, right? If it's like a software feature, they're fully autonomous and fully responsible for the delivery, for the operation of that particular component. This actually doesn't require, a very complex organizational structures, right? You want to empower, to give enough freedom to your organization, and let them just, own it. And actually in Amazon and across AWS, we have a multitude of such 2 pizza teams, right? And the concept is those organizations shouldn't be bigger than you could feed with two pizzas. And basically we're talking about American-sized pizzas. So we're looking at about 8, maybe 10, 12 people. Maximum. Beyond that, I mean, if there's really a need to scale beyond that, probably the team should be divided into smaller 2 pizza teams. Just because beyond that point, we've observed that the level of communication and coordination grows exponentially, and it's really much harder to actually sustain growth, innovation, if the team is really too big. So we're trying to empower. We're having a very flat hierarchical model there, and as an organization, this is what works for us. I mean, you can see it in the industry. I think the adoption of DevOps, right, agile sort of ways tend to be an alternative to what we call otherwise 2 pizza team.
Nico, what's your biggest team? Can you relate to that?
Absolutely, and we obviously take that always as a reference, that exponential growth of communication paths with the size of the team. And we've adopted also the concept of Spotify, the Spotify model, like our variation of it, of tribes and squads, and created cross-functional teams. But the idea was always like try to keep the teams as small as possible, but at the same time empowering the teams so that they're able to work autonomously. And that you don't build bottlenecks of one decision maker or that you have to wait for, or a separate team that is basically required to support to build that bottleneck. And what we've done, for example, we have our analytics team that doesn't build reports for the teams, but it builds the infrastructure for the teams to build the reports themselves. So that's the type of way we try to empower the teams so that they're not dependent on one specific report that they can't get to and make their decisions on, their product decisions on. Yeah.
Perfect. Stefan, at RBI, how did you structure your innovation processes?
We have as well similar model like described here, like with influence from Amazon, Spotify. And I just want to kind of outline or emphasize one point you just mentioned only on the side now, that if you even split the teams, because this is really a hard challenge which we, at least in our tribe, failed and kind of tried a few times, is, okay, good, the team, or kind of you grow, okay, split it into two teams, but the question is, how do you split that each of these teams can work autonomously? Yeah. So that means you have to split as well kind of the domain or the product somehow, that it really kind of benefits, because just splitting two teams and then they are so much dependent on each other, maybe in most cases even worse in the situation. Yeah. And this, especially in our tribe, working on a platform enabling many teams to build their products on cloud. We had as well the challenge, okay, how do we split now? Because we kind of, even in the team, kind of exceeded this two-pizza size, and had various tries or kind of iterations, what is the best composition when really then scaling out to these multiple two-pizza teams. And at least the situation we faced now and kind of are currently quite successful with this is really with including splitting the team domains, or kind of the aspect of the product into, then as well each team has a separate backlog and really can work autonomously from the other teams.
I can imagine for startups, for example, who start from zero, from the beginning, it's still a challenging to do, so to say, to structure organization correctly. But even more so, probably for an enterprise who does not come from this structure and have thousands of employees. Do you have any tips? How did you manage to transform your organization into this product and innovation open organization?
To be honest, this was in our side 3 years ago, and it was kind of disruptive, let's put it that way. So it's really like, okay, big announcement, the structure tomorrow will not look like it is looking today. Bringing all these principles in, so we kind of want to have end-to-end ownership. We want to have the DevOps. We want to kind of enable the teams to kind of really bring in their idea or their impact end-to-end. No kind of developer versus operation separation anymore. The business founder together with the team, and as I said, it was disruptive. A completely, or kind of a big portion of the complete leadership team was kind of selected newly because it's a different way of working. And yeah, honestly, I cannot imagine how it would work without a disruption. So you cannot do this with small steps.
When you have other clients in mind, is that the necessary step that every company needs to undertake when they want to get set for innovating in the future?
Tricky question, because I think what we always say is you can't take the Spotify model, just put it on some kind of organization, copy it, and it's working. So that's not how change is happening. And you have to certain extent respect the company's legacy, the company's culture, and every path is a little bit different in that kind of transformation. And change is hurting. So I know when I started with Accenture, we were 125,000 people, now reaching 600,000 globally. Our new slogan is "Let there be change," and within the last couple of years, there was a lot of change, and each change hurted within the organization. And it's always the same if you are advising companies. So change is not happening by itself. And therefore, it's important to grasp a little bit, okay, what is really the existing culture in the company, what kind of model could fit, because it's easy, you can take in banking sectors, there's some banks like, I don't know, Goldman Sachs, they've introduced a new legal entity with Marcus, implementing their things. RBI did their way, which worked out. So there's not a silver bullet which applies.
And no copy-paste.
There's no copy-paste. And which is good. So you have your legacy, you have your roots, and it's good to have that.
So you have to kind of set the focus on the culture. You have to set the focus on the organizational system. but also, as you mentioned, on the tooling and technology around it. And this is your other role in this discussion today, Dragos. As Amazon Web Services, I've learned that you are a very welcome kind of sometimes even technical co-founder or a real close partner to developing these products. How do you see this development from your AWS partner perspective? How can you support, and what kind of collaboration do you have with all these companies?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, definitely we've been, we've been from our early days, let's say, adopted, and many of the startups, have embraced Amazon Web Services, and let's call it maybe IT democratization that we brought. All of a sudden we simplified, the business of, having access to compute, to storage, to databases, and you could actually compete all of a sudden as a startup with, determined with leading maybe service providers in multiple industries, and we've seen that a lot of those industries have actually been disrupted. If you look at the tourism industry with Airbnb,
or TourRadar.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot of such examples where startups all of a sudden had a level playing field, and that's, I think, our part. To the extent that I think enterprises are actually indeed having a history. They have a legacy. Many times they do have a technical debt, right, and lots of promises from industry, IT service providers, lengthy projects, right, multi-year projects that rarely worked, and we're there to actually say, you know what, let's just build something, right? The cloud is there to deliver observable, fast results. Mm-hmm. So you can very easily prototype, you can very easily, build something as a prototype, take it from idea to product, minimum viable product. In Amazon, we actually invest and we work a lot with the concept of the minimum lovable product, because it's again about the customer experience. We want to make sure it's really there. So I think the cloud and the, as a platform, the architecture, the tooling can do that, right? With its, let's say, elasticity, with its on-demand sort of pricing, no upfront investments. I think that's a great way for enterprises to demonstrate, ideas, hypotheses, and put them into something, demonstratable that, take RBI's example of Stefan's tribe, the services backend platform. I mean, it just proved very quickly in a matter of months that it does work. It provides better business value, right? And it's observable. And then the organization begins to trust the idea of the cloud. I think we're there to support our customers through partners, right? We invest in helping them also mitigate the development costs, and the technology is really there, and it's we believe it's very accessible and very broad.
The technology is there. Is the trust in the technology there as well? Because enterprise didn't grow up with the cloud.
I think it's there. And I think the funny thing is, it's undisputable everything what Dragos just said. But the funny thing is the real value is coming out of the usage of cloud, not because, I don't know, the compute is more stable or the database is more stable, but it's the way how companies and enterprises are adopting it. And I think this is the game changer, because I think in the last couple of years there were several discussions on, is it more cheaper, how much more power you get out of it, is the compute really more elastic in scale? But now it turns out that it's really drilling down, and this is not coming to product, it's coming to innovation, that you're faster with it. Why? Because the process to get that kind of infrastructure, that kind of workload deployed there is different. So you change with that, it's more a vehicle that helps the companies to change the way how they work, to change the way how they operate the applications, the solutions. It's something totally different than your 24/7 operations of some solutions we had a couple of years ago. So I think this is really the big game changer. this is driving the innovation. It's not that you have a compute power somewhere in a different data center.
Is cloud a competitive advantage when you talk about innovating and building kind of the best products? Nico, can you imagine on-premise tool radar?
I absolutely not. No, I mean, if you just look at our company, we have 50 different services from AWS that we're working across 6 different regions. And a startup generally is looking for scalability at an early stage, and you don't want to have that additional infrastructure costs or complexity, and it just doesn't make sense for a startup to actually be able to scale. And at the same time, being able to test out different types of technologies at a fast pace allows you to see, okay, what fits to the customer's needs much faster. So an example that we just had last month was like, hey, search, let's try this database, let's try Elastic, let's try Dynamo, let's try Postgres, and see based on what is our requirement, which one works best from a performance perspective. And this is enabled via the cloud services, which you couldn't do at the speed that you would have to on a normal basis. So.
What was fascinating to me is also the kind of scope of collaboration with AWS, because they have very good former CTOs and very good experts that help you in this process. And my observation was you guys work kind of as teams that have fun together and work on these projects. How do you perceive this cooperation actually? Because I'm not a techie, so I don't have my own experience, and I'm always fascinated to hear about that.
For us, we worked also with solution architects to try to define this one specific problem with the search and see, hey, is the direction we're going the correct direction? It also gives a reassurance for like an unknown startup as to say, like, hey, are you going in the right direction?
At RBI, how was it when you? Well, first of all, maybe how do you perceive cloud? Is it like totally open to it, or is it only in certain aspects of your business? How do you go about it?
But the cloud, when we have a clear cloud-first strategy, it's our target, But we know, especially in the banking segment, there are separate workloads, separate countries, separate legislations where it's simply not possible. So there is of course the backup option, but our commitment goes into the direction of public cloud. For us, the impact, especially on our organization, our engineers, this is one aspect. So the technology itself, it's about accessibility. Let's put it that way, because a big corporate, they have database, they have compute, but the cloud shows us even it's easier to access these kind of resources than our own resources, this kind of enables these, because we talked before about these 2 pizza teams. Imagine a team of 8 people want to bring the product live, need some ingredients, and without this easy accessibility to these ingredients, you cannot build the product in a few weeks. The second dimension is that, especially in our company, that you get access as well to like new kind of technology which you don't have yet access to at all. And this is as well then, because in the very first beginning we talked about culture, this is what attracts in as well new talent, the engineers, competitive advantage. Other way around, would it be possible at all without the cloud?
Competitive disadvantage if you don't go this path. You mentioned the question of regulation. Obviously, in the financial sector, especially strong. How do you go about that? Because it's all about user experience. You said customer centricity. I think this is one of the main successes of Amazon in general. And obviously, you want to transform this mindset to your partners. But then there are regulatory burdens in terms of that. We have data protection. So do you have to, is it a trade-off between kind of regulatory and user experience when you build the products, or how do you go about the regulation?
Regulation, I think sometimes it's, I think it's possible. It's just then maybe some trade-off in the experience. So kind of, especially in we are active as well in the Eastern markets. There are some countries where there are other local legislations about how to treat customer data and stuff like that. But what it still get is that you have this kind of cultural change, this mindset, And if you end in a backup scenario, you need to kind of run it in a data center. Yeah, it's a trade-off, or kind of if you cannot partner here with this cool fintech in this country, yes, it's a trade-off. But I think the big, or the big movement is still there.
Yeah, definitely. I think we see a change here. So I think a couple of years ago, it was more an emotional topic on regulation, not that it were written down. And if you have a look at the ECB, ESMA, all the regulations, these are not really strict regulations, these are guidelines. So in guidelines, there's always a room for interpretation. And what was really eye-opening for me was, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, the director of the German Bundesbank had an interview in the Handelsblatt where they said, okay, the German banks are not investing enough into cloud. So, and typically you would assume, so if the director of the Austrian National Bank would stand up, it's something you would not assume to have that. But we see things now shifting and changing. And we know as well with several clients in Austria with access to the FMA, it's really working. So it's just, yeah, you have some processes to follow, you have some regulations you need to consider, but it's like with every other outsourcing you would do as well. And yes, there are several regulations on, I don't know, in banking, are you allowed to analyze, I don't know, payment data? That's true, but this is independent of if you're going to cloud or not. So I think we see that this emotional burden of not going to cloud and using regulatory as an excuse is going more down and down. But I agree, so there's still some other countries where it's not that easily possible, but here in Central Europe, Austria, Germany, it's working, yeah.
Nico, do you have to sacrifice user experience because of regulation? What's your kind of view on that from your branch, from your industry?
I mean, the biggest issue we have is the GDPR with the stupid pop-up on every single website that you have, which is just like ridiculous from a UX perspective.
It's ridiculous,
Like I think solutions like that should be thought through better, and how do you solve that type of things. But so far we've been relatively, like with the different tools that are out there, you can go around a lot of regulation like PCI compliance and stuff like that. You don't have to be, as a startup, PCI, like the super hardcore PCI compliance with all the different payment providers that are out there. So you're able to navigate and optimize with all the existing services that are out there so that you don't have that entire burden on your own. And that's, I think, the benefit of the current state of the industry, and also in the direction that it will go to help with innovation as well. Yeah.
Dragos, any other disadvantages or advantages with using or not using the cloud? What would you say?
Look, I mean, for us, security is really job zero. We start with security, and customers of all types, all industries entrust us with a lot of data, right? And with their most precious assets, and they're remaining the owners. They still own their data. So we're in this model as AWS. We call it the shared responsibility model, where we are responsible for numerous certifications, regulatory guidelines or approvals that we already offer to our customers, that they build on their own solutions, also in a compliant fashion, and overall the package then can pass the hardest, be it financial services, healthcare, defense, regulatory certifications. So I think it's totally doable. We tend to prefer, and we see that just because security is so important, we tend to discuss that first, actually, with our customers. So we try to get the fundamentals, understand the scope of their work, right? Explain very well our security standards. We employ a lot of security specialists to really support customers adapt their security, let's say, profile, their operating mode in the cloud versus what they were doing maybe on-prem. So we offer this sort of guidance, and I think, as mentioned, there's numerous customers all across the industries that do have, very comfortable, let's say, journey towards the cloud. And even in the highest regulated industries, I think this is a legacy of the work we do together there.
Would you all agree that the data, at the end of the day, is crucial to building really good products? Because you can personalize them, because you can adopt it to the needs of the individual as to the highest possible extent.
Yeah, fully agree. Nothing to add. So I think we've seen that probably in the last years, there was a lot of investments going into fancy UI. And now everyone has this fancy UI. We see the investments are going into smart user experience, hyper-personalization, provide the right offer at the right point of time, access the zero moment of truth, identify as well, I don't know, what is the risk of churn for my customers if they're not satisfied. So I think we're moving away from that fancy UI, even though there's this okay for the cookies and GDPR access, but still to a more smarter way, and to be smart and to provide hyper-personalization, that kind of things, you need to have the data.
Nico?
Yeah, it was one of the key success factors for us, because our just as example, our journey is over 60 days, over 15 different channels that they come to our site from, 2.5 different devices. So we had to figure out a way to combine all this data and be able to understand the user journey and come up with a good customer understanding and optimize that journey for them, and understand also from a marketing perspective what is working, what is not working. And so the data set was the key component, and the tracking of it and understanding of that to be able to successfully provide a good user experience.
As opposed to enable you to spy on somebody who really none of the companies that I met cares about.
Yeah, exactly.
Using data to build the best product for the customer.
Exactly, yeah.
At RBI, data?
As a bank, we're kind of sitting on tons of data, knowing even kind of even on transactions can really profile things. What for us is the biggest topic Dragos mentioned a little bit with the security model is how to kind of use it without losing any kind of the protection. And kind of
Anonymized usage of data.
Anonymize and really kind of keep it separate. We mentioned this shared responsibility model. So with AWS, you can build the Fort Knox product, but as well a super open kind of product at the same time. And especially when it comes then with productive data, we have very strong and strict guardrails, because as well the impact or the reputational impact as well is maybe different with other companies. I don't know if the PlayStation network data leaks, okay, it's a bad thing, but if a bank's data leaks, it's a disaster.
Dragos, do you help your partners with their coping with this issue? Let's say I'm a company and I have data and I want to understand what I can make with this data. Could I come to you with that issue and say, Dragos, help me, and make sure that everything is legal and that everything is running fast and so on and so forth, to be very primitive in this question?
Yeah, I mean, do you mean rather the customer data or data in general?
Data in general. If I come to you and say, listen, I have this data, what do I need to do? Help me use this data to build a good product. Are you a partner in that?
No, yeah, absolutely. The focus on data and analytics in the past few years, has grew tremendously. We've innovated a lot. We've built, technology platforms such as our AI ML platform SageMaker, which supports, very advanced users of the machine learning algorithms, right, to adapt or utilize various frameworks, right? Or we made it as easy to be consumed and accessed by less experienced, let's say, hardcore data scientists, and just use prepackaged services, right? So if you imagine the AWS platform of services, and currently we're counting over 175 fully fledged services on our platform. A vast majority of the latest investments have been in this artificial intelligence, machine learning, which helps our customers really determine, make sense of data wherever human observation is not really capable of. That's on one end. Then we also listen a lot to our customers, I would say, and a testament of that is that 90% of our roadmap comes from customer feedback, customer requests, and that's data that we use in order to build products. The other 10% is what we make sense of and kind of read through the lines and try to anticipate what the customer would want, but maybe they didn't express it. So that also means kind of correlating a lot of data points. And an example in that, and kind of takes us back to the data products, analytic products, is Amazon Redshift, which is a data warehouse running in the cloud that nobody really asked for, but was tremendously successful and still is. And we're seeing a shift, right? Exactly. And now with the move to say data lakes, to data mesh, structures, I think the technology just offers so many opportunities for customers to pick and choose and build their own solutions out of the breadth and depth of services that we offer.
Do I need to be a developer to understand this world of features that you offer, or what kind of skill set do I need?
I mean, we see the boundaries blurring a little bit between IT and business, right? Before we used to talk about there's a business, there's a IT, and then there's a marketing organization that needs to somehow sell whatever the first guys built. Right now, with the sort of organization models we've talked about, we see the lines are blurring a little bit, and there's much more power and much easier access to, let's say, non-technical owners of products, right? To get their hands dirty, experiment, test their hypothesis, and if something works, iterate at a very fast pace. So it doesn't have to be, necessarily developer oriented. There's a lot of products that are easier to adopt, and wherever this is maybe a challenge, we have our community of Amazon partners that are there to support customers in that journey.
One of them
Exactly
today with us.
Right.
Let's do a wrap up. This was super interesting for me. What are your takeaways? Maybe as your colleague called us, the famous final words of the discussion, and then maybe the 3 takeaways that we can give to our community. Who wants to start, Stefan?
Maybe somebody else can start. I haven't thought about what, because I learned a lot of new kind of impressions today. Therefore,
for me, would be don't reinvent the wheel. Focus on the customer's problems.
Perfect.
Basically, so utilize everything that is already out there, so that other people have already solved. To solve the customer's problem that are out there.
Let there be change. So just copying our slogan, but because it somehow fits as well to, to a very traditional successful bank, successful startup company. So you see this kind of paradigm everywhere. And I think we all have the same mindset we're going towards, and I think even it blurs between having startup and organizations. So this is probably my takeaway a little bit, that the objectives, the challenges, everything it's very much similar. Yeah.
Stefan?
For me, because it was surprising, or kind of before the talk, I thought the corporate versus the startup would be the more
big
opposites.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see kind of what kind of commonalities there are, and what kind of this common partner, or kind of this common technology, or kind of this common way of working basically unifies and make X-Welt and the experience exchangeable. So kind of looking here forward maybe for other topics which might be more applicable than I thought before the interview.
Dragos, 3 things to remember.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's really very satisfying to see that the partners, the customers we work with, also put the customer at the center of their innovation, and that's really what we call, to quote the company, let's say motto. It's day one mentality, which means be customer oriented, be customer focused, rather than internal process sort of scaling up your resources. So as long as we're doing that and we're reinventing, and I saw some great examples today, I think we have a very, very bright future ahead of us.
Customer focused also means build your organization around the customers that you have in focus.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are synergies, and we like to say that while having a great architecture will help, while having a great maybe company culture will help, having mechanisms to get from idea to product. I think that really, if you put those things together, the sum is greater than the parts, put one next to another. So there are synergies, and we're there to, inspire with maybe our story as Amazon, or to hold the hands of the customers who are really looking to reinvent themselves.
Perfect, and we're going to be looking to next talks and further examples of reinventing themselves. Thank you for all those insights. It was super interesting for me as well. I learned many new things. Thanks for being with us in the studio, and all the best for all of your products that you're providing or building together with your customers.
Thanks very much for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being with us. That was our next and second Tech Talk Roundtable with Amazon Web Services. We'll keep you posted on different product mindsets, on different strategies on how to develop product from an idea and have the best experience that we'll provide you here on this panel. Thanks for being with us, and ciao.